So, yesterday is, well, today is December 15th. It is day 15 of Vlogmas. This is my 15th entry into the Vlogmas thing. I'm trying to do a Vlogmas entry every day. This is my 15th day. This one's involved, so I'm going to talk fast. There are going to be a lot of cuts. Alright, so yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of the net neutrality laws being overturned. The regulations were overturned by Congress. FCC chairman himself just like, let's get rid of this, and they succeeded. They got rid of it. We have been, it was overturned a year ago yesterday. That actually went into effect just a few months later. So we've been net neutrality less for the better part of a year. And none of the hyperbolic nonsense that went on a year ago, all of the dire predictions about how the internet was going to become very expensive, all the predictions about how it was going to be throttled, how only certain services would be available, none of that happened, and none of it was going to happen, and a lot of people knew it wasn't going to happen. And I have a long, long list here. I mean, I've literally just been collecting a list of articles from a year ago about how from the Washington Post, CNN, Splinter News, The Hill, New York Times, several from Vox, one from GQ, and something called Network World. I'm just finding more and more and more of them. There could easily be 100 of these. I'm just gonna, in the description, put like a list of the ones I found and read through. I'm not gonna read 100 articles just for a stupid Vlogmas video. But there is a point to this. And that's bigger than the net neutrality thing, but let me get to that. My point for all of this is that net neutrality which was initiated in 2015. Let's never forget that the internet has existed since the 90s. It's been a really big thing with the World Wide Web since 95-ish, 96, somewhere around there, when you could get your AOL discs. So let's say, for argument's sake, 95, which is to say that it existed for a good 20 years before net neutrality was a thing. And these articles I'm reading, all of it, and it is truly hyperbole. The hyperbolic articles I'm reading, that I'm going through, are all about the horrible things that are going to happen the instant net neutrality is gone. Never mind that it wasn't there for 20 years of it. Never mind none of this happened. This has always been a solution in search of a problem. It's, I mean, just, dear God, I mean, going through some of these titles, they're just ridiculous. The loss of net neutrality, say goodbye to an open internet. The problem with these, there's a lot of problems, actually, with these articles. Not the least of which being, there was never any indication anywhere, ever, that any ISP was going to throttle connections into tiers the way they describe. Going through this, I used to work for an ISP, and what the ISP I worked for noticed was that when they did like a survey of their data for their business model, they noticed that more than 95% of their users for the DSL, it was a DSL, this was back, God, 2003-ish, so it was a bit out of date. But what they noticed was 95% of their users were never, ever getting anywhere near the maximum amount of bandwidth. They were never using it. Like, they could have used far less, and they wouldn't have noticed. They just never used as much as they had. They all wanted it. They wanted fast service because fast service sounds good, particularly if you don't understand the ins and outs of these speeds and you just see a speed like some weird number on a screen. It's like, well, what does that mean? I want a good thing, so I'll pay a little more for the good thing, especially if it's only a few bucks more. So what a lot of DSL providers and ISP, high-speed internet, did was they created two tiers. They basically throttled everyone to a certain sustainable level. What does that mean? It means that If you go to pick a random connection for some random user, and you change the settings on your terminal software to give this user maximum bandwidth, so no throttles whatsoever, their connection will actually drop. You set them to the maximum connection, particularly for ADSL, it would drop, their connection would drop out all the time. It was trying to use a maximum amount of the bandwidth, trying to use every single frequency that it could, because the connection wasn't great. If they couldn't support it, it would cause all sorts of disruptions. They'd constantly lose their connection, downloads would freeze, it just didn't work. If you set them a little lower to something that their phone line could support, then their connection becomes super stable. So the thinking was, we'll throttle everyone down to a certain level, a stable level for absolutely everyone, well above what anyone was using, well above what 90% of our users were using. And if anyone wants the higher end service, we'll say, okay, it's like, $5-10 a month extra, and then we only have to do the expensive technical support and infrastructure improvements for those people who absolutely want or need those really high-end connections, because trying to get everyone at a stable connection at our highest bandwidth was just impossible. It was just too expensive. And the alternative was to raise the price, and I'm in Ohio, which has an unusual amount of market competition for high-speed internet. So that was the extent of the throttling. It's like there's a lot of high-speed bandwidth that no one's using except for a handful of users. Let's just charge them a few bucks extra so we can use that money to actually support it, to do the troubleshooting and so on, roll the trucks to go out to their house to give them a better internet connection. ADSL goes over a phone line. One of the problems is here in Cincinnati, the phone line infrastructure is ancient. Like there are plenty of houses around here, particularly closer to a neighborhood called Clifton, some very old houses where every time it rains the phone line goes out, or they get a lot of static. Obviously, if you're trying to get data through a phone line that gets staticky signal for regular voice calls, obviously it's going to have trouble with data. That's just how it works. What was proposed by these articles, and a number of these pictures I'm seeing, like they had these little, like this is what, like little graphics about what the net neutrality means to you, you foolish person who doesn't realize what's at stake here. Like their idea was that it would be like highway lanes, like certain sites like Comcast, AT&T would be fast lanes, and everyone else would be a slow lane and get to the site. That doesn't really happen at the ISP level, which is what they suggested here. Furthermore, no ISP suggested they were going to do this. They were going to pick a particular location on the internet, or a particular website or group of websites. I mean, the idea that sites run by AT&T would go somehow faster than sites run by someone else, and it's like that depends on who they chose as their web host. I mean, that's what's going to determine how fast that they can download stuff, and the network infrastructure at the host end, not the internet service provider. And furthermore, how or why would you do that at the internet service provider? And God, this is worth mentioning too. I mean, a lot of these are complicated details. I just want to go through these real quick, just to get this out of my head. Is that for a lot of the internet, this is the United States of America. It's a big, wide country. There's a lot of problems with getting everyone up to date, particularly in places where their internet service provider is effectively a monopoly anyway, where they have their audience. I live in Ohio. I'm very lucky about that because we have a lot of different choices for ISP. I recently went to fiber optic fiber optic about a year or two ago when it was available, and it's a dream. It just works great. I am a high-end user. I have a lot of people in this house, and we all download a lot of stuff. But it's the ISPs need more money for infrastructure to upgrade to, for example, fiber optics or something else. You can't just say they have to charge it. If they can't charge different fees for different levels of service, then they just raise their prices across the board. A lot of the impetus behind these articles is so misguided and has such a poor understanding of economics and business. It's just shocking and annoying to me. Just the idea that there'd be an internet where you could only access Facebook, Twitter, and shit like that, but if you wanted access to everything, you'd have to pay $100 a month. And I'm thinking you can go to Starbucks with your laptop and get access to the internet. If any ISP in any competitive market at all tried to say you could go to certain sites and another, that's not throttling, that's a broken internet connection. That's a product that doesn't work and someone's just going to switch to a different one. In the states where they have a monopoly, they don't have much choice, but then the actual ISPs themselves don't want to be in a lawsuit or in monopoly hearings from the federal government. So none of them did this. None of them even suggested doing this. So a year later, none of this stuff in any of these articles has happened because none of it was ever going to happen. None of it happened in the 20 years leading up to the net neutrality, and none of it happened in the year after net neutrality was gone. I just wanted to do a little discussion about that. I've been reading these articles just getting pissed off at the ignorance of it. And what also pisses me off is I could see someone who doesn't know as much about telecommunications, which is everyone. I mean, you plug it in and the damn thing works, right? What do you need to know? Someone looking at these articles or these graphics and just going, oh, that's how it works? God, that's terrible. I'll vote for this. And it's like, this is misleading, this is misguided, and this isn't true. A lot of this information is just flat out not true. That's not how these things work. That just pissed me off. I think I'm going to stop right here. But I might go back to this in a little more detail. But I just wanted to do a quick video for Vlogmas, hitting on these a little. And I wanted to post all of the net neutrality nonsense articles I found because they are nonsense. Alright, that's me. I'm out.